All right, so the square root property. This is just an example. This is an example of one type of square root property. You'll usually see two types of problems, which we'll cover, where you have the parentheses with your little 2 equals, and then another, usually it's another perfect square. So the square root property is in its name. What is square root? So you take the square root of each side. Now, for the square root property from Unit 1, remember what is our signs? The plus and minus. So for the square root property, you'll have two answers. All right, so let's try it. So these problems are from our notes that you can get on the Canvas or the Math Lab. All right, so it will say use the square root property to solve these problems. All right, so you take the square root of each side. Now, on the left side, the square root symbol and the little 2 are going to cancel each other out. So you're just going to bring down that x minus 4 because they're opposite. A square and square root are opposite, so those cancel each other out. Now, before I do that right side, what are my signs for square root property? Plus and minus. Now, take the square root of 49, 7. So now we need to solve for x minus 4 with a positive 7, and then x minus 4 with a negative 7. So you're going to have two answers. So add your 4 to each one. So you should get -3 and 11. So in the instruction, it always says use the square root property. So you know to take the square root of each side, and that's your plus and minus. So for square root, you'll have two answers. Okay, so let's look at the second example. So it'll say use the square root property to solve. So put your square root on each side. Now, this left side of our second problem, it's not in parentheses and it's not a regular number. So just take the square root of each part, the number and then the variable. So what's the square root of 4? 2. What's the square root of y squared? Y. Before you do the right side, put that plus and minus, and then take the square root of 9, which is 3. So then solve one with a positive 3, 2y equals -3. So divide your 2 on each side. Oh, that's not supposed to be there. And then 1 is a positive and 1 is a negative. And that's that answer. So that's how you do the square root property. So you'll see it either way, with a parentheses with a little 2, or just with a number and a y squared or x squared. So you just take the square root of each one. So the thing here that most students mess up on is forgetting to put the plus and minus. So you just have to remember from Unit 1 stuff, square root property is your plus and minus. So two answers. All right, so that is how we do our square root property.